pass to Leitner. Puts it up.
You're listening to the Culture State Podcast.
Get ready. Woo!
Welcome to another amazing episode of the Culture State Podcast. We've been having a lot of firsts lately. Yeah. This is the first time I'm wearing this amazing shirt for this show.
By the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
This is not the first time I've worn this shirt.
I think pink does well for me. I think red does well for you.
It does. By the way, pink, very underrated color.
Very underrated.
Very underrated color.
I used to get picked on in high school wearing pink. That was before it was cool for guys to wear pink.
Yeah.
But then, it started becoming cool for guys to wear pink. And then I stopped getting picked on.
Imagine that.
It's crazy how that goes. But anyway, enough about my life and what happened in my life. Let's talk about some other stuff. We have a very special show. We have double guests today for the Culture State Podcast. We have Boomer Esiason, former Pro Bowl quarterback, also NFL analyst, and we have Austin Dillon. He is the current driver of the number 3 car in NASCAR. He's from North Carolina. Of course, his grandfather, you should know of him if you know NASCAR. If you don't, his name is Richard Childress, and he's a big name in NASCAR. And so, it's one of those special episodes where we have a lot happening for you. We're packing a big time punch in just a short amount of time.
That's right. Let's not waste any time. NFL training camps are about to get started. By the time you're listening to it, they might already be in training camp. Well, let's go ahead and hear some Panthers talking a little bit of realignment about how this could impact schools here in the state of North Carolina. Boomer Esiason next.
First off, the biggest thing that's happening down here in North Carolina, Baker Mayfield coming down to the Carolina Panthers. I want to know your initial thoughts on that. And do you think that this move moves the needle at all for the Panthers? Does it get them from 5 wins to maybe sneaking in as a wild card spot?
I think Matt Rule is throwing everything he possibly can at the offense. A healthy Christian McCaffrey will help whoever's playing quarterback for them. And of course, with the new offensive coordinator coming in and trying to ignite the offense, understand, blitzes in the NFL, which is what Matt Rule has been frustrated by last year's performance. I would say that it does move the needle. There's no question about it. There's a lot of good young players on this roster. The question is, who is the quarterback? And I know Baker Mayfield is saying all the right things right now. I want to work with Sam. I want to compete against Sam. Look, both of these guys have been starters. And Baker Mayfield took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs. This is not going to be something that he is going to be happy about if he ends up being the backup to Sam Darnold. So I think if you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't really have one. And I think there has to be one definite starter on this roster. And then I think the other one should be jettisoned, should be out of there, because you're going to create all sorts of problems no matter how nice the guys seem to be publicly.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question because, Matt Rule's only been here for 2 years. He's going into his 3rd year with the Panthers, and there hasn't seemed to have been a real plan at quarterback. They bring in Teddy Bridgewater for the first year, sign him to a 3-year deal, didn't like him after 1 year, have him go. Bring in Sam Darnold, immediately pick up his 5th-year option. Middle of the season, bring back Cam Newton. Now he's not back, and now it's Baker Mayfield. So you're talking about 4 starting caliber quarterbacks or quarterbacks who have started in the NFL in less than 3 years for Matt Rule. Is it apparent to you that there wasn't a true plan at what they wanted to do for this?
Well, the quarterback position is the hardest position in the NFL to figure out. And I think they rolled the dice with Sam Darnold. I think a lot of us thought here in New York that Sam was going to be good, but who knew that the Jets were going to ruin him the way that they did with Adam Gase. Different offensive coordinators. Here's a Southern California kid, age 20, starting for the New York Jets. That kid wasn't ready mentally to handle it. And then he goes down there, and I don't necessarily know, listening to all the things that Matt Rule has said this offseason, whether or not that offense was really a competent offense, understanding where blitzes were coming from, blocking schemes and things of that nature. That's one of the reasons why they have a new offensive coordinator, hopefully to solidify it for the quarterback who's behind the offensive line to understand where to go with the football. But, I just think that, every team in the league is trying to find that guy, the next Joe Burrow, the next Justin Herbert, the next Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. And, you're going to just keep taking shots on goal, if you will, Chris, until you finally get it right. if I had to look at this from the outside like I am right now, I would think that Baker Mayfield will be the starter for the Panthers this year, and that Sam Darnold will be moved on from either he'll be cut or he'll be traded. I just don't see both of them coexisting on the same team once the season starts.
Very interesting. I want to ask this as well. When David Tepper took over, he let Ron Rivera stay in the job for a little bit, and then he wanted to have his stamp on the team. He brings in Matt Rule, initially a 6-year contract, says, hey, this is going to take time. We are rebuilding. But you have to think after 2 5-win seasons, the quarterback carousel that's been happening there in Charlotte, and some of the other things that you pointed out with the offense and how it was last year, along with other injuries, do you think that this is it for Matt Rule this year? He has to win this year or is he out? Do you think he's on the hot seat?
Well, the one thing I will say is that David Tepper is one of the wealthiest owners in the NFL. No longer the wealthiest owner in the NFL, by the way, as the Denver Broncos were just sold to the wealthiest owner, one of the Walton family members. But I would say that most of these owners are impatient. They want to win as quickly as they possibly can. I think one of the reasons why Matt Rule got that 6-year deal was because of what happened with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, what was going on with Joe Douglas, the new GM at the Jets, got a 6-year deal. Most of these owners realized that in order to get the guy that they wanted, they had to go out a little bit longer. I would say that if Baker Mayfield takes hold there and somehow, reignites the player that he was 2 years ago, I think that, Matt Rule could have a lot of success, especially with the new offense. The key to me when it comes to the Carolina Panthers is the health of Christian McCaffrey. When he's on the field, they are a completely different team. He is one of the top 5 offensive players in the NFL when healthy. The problem is the last couple of years, his health has obviously been a big, I think, burden on the quarterback that has been playing. And when Sam was playing without Christian McCaffrey, is when Sam really struggled. So if Baker Mayfield gets a healthy Christian McCaffrey, then I think Baker Mayfield can turn back into the quarterback he was 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Let's head up 95 North a little bit. Let's and land in Baltimore. I just, from a quarterback perspective, I'm interested in what you think about this. Lamar Jackson, of course, has had a few good years since he's been in the NFL. Former MVP, and he's representing himself, which is, I think, is a really interesting thing with that. But more than just that, he's looking and he's seeing what Deshaun Watson got, $230 million fully guaranteed. As a quarterback yourself, and if you're representing yourself in a situation, I don't know if you ever had to represent yourself. I assume that you had an agent the whole time. Are you taking anything less than that, seeing what Deshaun Watson has done, even though Deshaun Watson is not a former MVP and hasn't played over the last year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, I've debated this many times with my radio partner here in New York. The fact of the matter is if I were in Lamar Jackson's shoes, I would use Deshaun Watson's contract as my starting point. And Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, right after the Browns did that kind of contract, which is an NBA contract, if you will, it's all guaranteed. That's never happened in the NFL. Said it's going to be really difficult for the rest of us to deal with our players now because of what the Browns did. So, and they gave it to a guy who sat out a year. Now, I know how great Deshaun Watson could be on the football field, but he's got all of this stuff off the field. And if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm like, hey, guys, I'm an MVP. The whole team is run around me. But I would also say Marquise Brown wanted to leave Baltimore for a reason. And the reason he wanted to leave was because the passing game was one of the worst in the league. And quarterbacks in this league nowadays are judged on their passing statistics. And that's one thing that Baltimore does not do very well. And that goes back to the quarterback. So it's a real conundrum for John Harbaugh, for Steve Bisciotti, and the Ravens as to how much Lamar is truly worth. I think he's the face of the franchise. I'd probably pay him somewhere around $40 to $45 million over the next 4 years. And hopefully he stays healthy and he can finally get his team to the Super Bowl. But I don't think they're going to be one of the better teams in the AFC this year because the AFC is loaded.
Absolutely is loaded. I'm looking at, just kind of the landscape of everything. I think maybe the Bills take another step this year for sure. But the AFC, it's kind of like, it's a pick 'em. The Rams, to me, seem like the clear and obvious favorite in the NFC. So with that being said, and what you're looking at right now, I know that things can and will change during the season. Who do you see as the potential winner of the Super Bowl?
Well, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, the Rams. And don't count out San Francisco. Trey Lance is going to be their starting quarterback. They'll move on from Jimmy Garoppolo here very shortly. It's going to be one of those 3 or 4 teams over in the NFC. In the AFC, it's wide open simply because you have so many great quarterbacks, especially in the AFC West. And don't forget about, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson's now at the Denver Broncos. They've had a really good roster. They just haven't had a quarterback to speak of. You take a look at Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. They've been close every year, and now he's got a veteran quarterback. Frank Reich does, their head coach, so they're going to be in the mix. So I just think that it's going to be either the Chargers, the Bengals, or the Kansas City Chiefs against one of those other 4 teams in the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's the best I can do at this point.
Yes, super early. I don't know if how far we can all get making Super Bowl bets in July. Let me ask you about this. Still football, but let's take it to college football. When you played at Maryland, it was the ACC. It's now the Big Ten, where Maryland plays right now. And then, of course, now the Big Ten is going to welcome in USC and UCLA in a couple of years. Where do you see all this going in college football with the realignment? Do you think that the Pac-12, the Big 12, the ACC can even survive some of the realignment that's been happening?
As long as Clemson stays in the ACC and maybe the ACC expands, maybe some loosely partnership with the teams that are left over in the Pac-12, maybe they could do it that way. If Clemson decides to leave and goes to the SEC, then I think the ACC is in trouble because then either Florida State or Miami would most likely follow. But, I think it's a mess right now in college football between the realignment, between the nil deals that the players are benefiting from. You heard what Nick Saban what he said about Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher buying players. It's a mess. It is basically, we are going into no man's land. And there's nobody that has any sort of ability to keep anybody in check. So until there's some major agreement that everybody signs and everybody believes in and everybody's going to be beholden to, I think we're just at the tipping point of college football, and there are more changes to come over the next 3 to 5 years.
It's been 10, 11 years since Maryland left the ACC, but since you played in the ACC, are you in your heart an ACC guy? If the ACC falls apart, how do you feel about that?
I was sad that they left. I really was. They were one of the founding members of the ACC. It was a financial move, 100%. The Big Ten was expanding. They took Rutgers with them. And now all of a sudden we find ourselves in these weird games, playing Indiana, Illinois in football, whatever. The basketball stuff is good. The lacrosse stuff is good. But the football stuff feels weird for me, obviously, because our big rivals were Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson. We played against, Wake Forest and NC State. I mean, it just feels weird, and it never really felt smooth when it came to football. So I miss the ACC from a football perspective, but I can't argue with the amount of money that Maryland ended up getting from the Big Ten and will now even get more money from the Big Ten because of the expansion with UCLA and USC.
Right now, that grant of rights that's holding all the teams in place till 2036 is what's kind of holding everything in place. So we'll see what happens with that. I wanted to leave you with this. I know that you are a New York Islanders fan. As you're looking forward, how do you think the Islanders will do?
All right. So the only reason I'm an Islander, I tolerate the Islanders because my son-in-law plays for them.
Oh,
so I'm a Ranger fan. I grew up a hardcore Ranger fan.
You grew up a Rangers fan. Right? Okay.
And my
just
daughter,
tolerate.
My daughter turned a turncoat around the age of 20, and she decided to marry an Islander. So my Rangers are better than the Islanders right now. And my Rangers made it to the Eastern Conference Final unexpectedly this year. And I fully expect them to be immersed in the NHL playoffs next year, Chris. So I'm glad you brought up the Islanders, though, because I just don't see them making the playoffs this coming year.
Okay, so I have to ask you about the Rangers then, because of course, the Hurricanes play here in Raleigh.
Yes.
And, a lot of folks here were super surprised, even though the Canes, lost to a team that definitely deserved to win. The Canes hadn't lost at home in the postseason. All of a sudden, the one game that they lose was a deciding Game 7 to the Rangers. So do you think that this is maybe a nice little new rivalry that's kind of boiling up? Your Rangers, our Hurricanes. What do you think is happening next year?
You know what it comes down to? It comes down to the goalie. Now, Antti Raanta was a backup to Henrik Lundqvist up here, so I know Antti and I know how good he is. But Igor Shesterkin, our goalie here, is going to, he obviously won the Vezina Trophy this year, and he's going to be good for the next 10 years. I mean, he is a tremendous player. He reminds me a little bit of Martin Brodeur, the way that he handles the puck. And if you remember how great Martin Brodeur was, he took a lot of pressure off of his defensemen. And I think that's exactly what our goalie does. And that's why I believe that the New York Rangers are going to be a formidable force in the Eastern Conference for at least the next 5 to 6 years.
All right. Boomer Esiason, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Game Time with Boomer. Make sure you go check that out. Nice set right there. I need to do a little bit better with my house right here. I have this empty corner since I just moved into my house. All the furniture is taking months and months and months to get in. So at some point, this will all be dressed.
Close the blinds. This is what I do. I close all the blinds here and then turn up the lights, and hopefully it makes the place look good.
All right. We want to thank Mr. Boomer Esiason for giving us some time. And you might be seeing Boomer with Culture State a little bit more in the near future. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, make sure you're watching Game Time with Boomer Esiason. It's his new show. It comes on Fox 50 on Sundays. Make sure you check the time. The time, start can change sometimes here. It's usually at 11 o'clock.
Subject to change.
It's subject to change. But right now, as we're in the summertime, before football has really started, right now is going to be on Sunday nights at 11. But it's a good show. Make sure you guys check that out.
I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, might have a little Culture State connection going on with that here in the near future. But we shall see. Subject to change. Now, you mentioned it at the start of the show. We got some lineage here in the state of North Carolina. Austin Dillon, grandson of Richard Childress, Richard Childress Racing, one of the biggest names in all of NASCAR and auto sports. Well, guess what? Chris, you talked to him. And now everyone else gets to hear and see that conversation next.
So first off, Austin Dillon, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to ask you about so much that's outside of the world of racing that you have going on right now. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time for you. But right now in racing, you've had a few top 5s, a few top 10s this year, new car, new system and everything like that. How's it been just kind of getting adjusted and acclimated to what's been happening with the new cars and new packages for the season in NASCAR?
Well, it's been a grind, man. We've been working really hard to figure out this new car and still working on it to get it to drive good. It doesn't drive the best, but we've been able to manage some really good finishes with it. So happy with the team and the effort that we've been putting out there. And hopefully we keep progressing for the rest of this year.
When you say it doesn't drive the best, what are some of the differences that you notice, between the cars from last year and before and the one from this year? What are the differences you have to get used to?
I think the steering's the biggest thing. It's really quick, and when you have moments, it's hard to catch. You just really can't back steer this car, and when you do, it usually doesn't go well.
Okay. A lot happening in your personal life, and this is the one that excited me. So I wanted to talk to you about this. But you just became general manager of a professional bull riding team out of Winston-Salem. So first off, tell me about that. How did that come to be, and what's the future of this? What do you want this to go?
Well, hopefully, what we do is, win the championship this year in the PBR teams event. It's the inaugural year for PBR teams, and we're excited to, be a part of the Carolina Cowboys general manager. And I've been learning a lot about bull riding over the last couple of months. I've got an excellent coach in Jerome Davis, and we're just going to go out there and prepare a group of guys, Cowboys that are ranked and want to go ride those bulls. And we put together the best staff we can to support these guys. And hopefully at the end of the year, we bring home the trophy.
Is this something as far as like becoming a general manager and working in the background and not necessarily being the athlete, the talent? in front. Is that something that you've been wanting to work towards for a while, or is this one of these opportunities just kind of popped up and you just hopped on it?
Well, I think, getting that experience as the, a GM of the Carolina Cowboys is huge. I've always been a huge sports fan in general, whether it comes from fantasy football or my basketball leagues that I've created around town here, and just, keeping up with stats, keeping up with the drafts that go on and how the NFL draft works. It's always been something of mine that, if I didn't race cars, I'd love to GM a team or try and help run a team. So it's an awesome opportunity, and I can't wait for the year to get going.
All right, General Manager Austin Dillon. I like the way that sounds. Tell me a little bit more about this reality show that's coming out. I just found out about this. Got cameras following you all around everywhere, and your life doesn't become as personal. I'm sure you still have your personal times, but now your life is captured on camera for folks to see. What's that been like adjusting to that type of life?
It's been good, man. We've had a great group of producers. The USA Network and has done a really good job with the show, and I've enjoyed it. It was definitely some times where it was stressful. It was a lot to take on, but I was really happy to do it with my best friends, my wife, and our friends Paul and Mariel. And we just wanted to showcase our lives a little bit and what we do in NASCAR, and also our faith. So it's mostly a faith and family show, and love that.
Cool. What are some things that we don't know about you that maybe we'll get a chance to discover on this show?
I'm not sure. You'll have to tune in and watch. Have a little prank war, I think, throughout the show. That's pretty good. And just, the amount of time that we spend traveling, going to these races.
Yeah. It's called Austin Dillon's Life in the Fast Lane. Comes out on USA. When is it airing?
I think June 22nd, around that time frame. June.
All right. Sounds good. Nice summer watching for us. Speaking of watching over the summer, I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. You're a Carolina Panthers fan. The draft just ended. What are your thoughts about the draft in general? We got a left tackle, Ike Ekwonu from Charlotte, went to NC State. What are your thoughts about the draft so far, since you're an avid sports fan, an avid Carolina Panthers fan, and where they're headed with the organization?
Well, I think we definitely need to shore up that line, and we did that this offseason. I mean, I think we've got a top 10 line, top 5. I mean, I don't know how great this line could be, but I'm buddies with Taylor Moton, and I'm pumped for him and all those guys up front. Christian McCaffrey, I know he's jacked up to get behind those big boys, and hopefully they run the ball a lot. And we'll just see how the year goes. But I enjoyed the draft. Looked like we got some fast linebackers too in the draft. That that defense wins championships. So I'm glad we took some of those picks, and we'll just see how it all plays out. But it was a really good thing that we got a big left tackle in Icky, and it was cool that he's from the Charlotte area.
Yeah. You mentioned being friends with Taylor Moton. What's it like just kind of being at the top of your game in NASCAR? He's at the top of his game in the NFL, and just having friends in other avenues. And you guys are working with the busy schedules, but you're still able to maintain a friendship. What's that like? Just kind of comparing notes about the different things you guys kind of go through, and how that kind of bonds you all together.
Well, I think you learn to respect the different person's grinds, and you try and pick something up from those guys. They're good at what they do for a reason. They're made it to the top level of their sport, and you try and pick little things up and apply it to your game, and always be learning.
Awesome. I want to ask you a couple questions about being from North Carolina, since we have just a little bit more time left. I'm from the Triad area, from High Point. And I want to know, what are some of your favorite restaurants, maybe in Welcome, in the Davidson County area, or some of your favorite foods that you feel like are the best in the world because they're from home?
Well, we got Lexington barbecue around here at the race shop. That's pretty popular. I like the vinegar-based barbecue myself. The Childress Vineyards, got to give them a plug. My mom works over there. She takes care of the winery and the bistro, and it's doing well. And but let's see. I live in Thomasville. There's a couple places that I go. I like. Oh my goodness, I can't think of the name of it. And I eat there across the railroad track. Cross Ties. There he goes.
Okay.
Cross Ties is a restaurant in Thomasville. I eat there. Also got to give a shout out to Laughlin's. I love country food. I like lima beans, green beans, collard greens.
Yeah.
And I'm just a meat and veggie kind of guy. So I really enjoy going there and eating at Laughlin's.
You ever been to the Biscuit Factory in High Point?
I have one time, but my man, Austin Craven's a huge fan of the Biscuit Factory.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to know. I had a chance to get there recently and try to, have a taste of home since I'm in Raleigh right now. I haven't had a chance to be over there in a while. And it's interesting you talked about the vinegar-based barbecue. Wish we could go further into that because I know Raleigh has their own thing when it comes to the barbecue, but you're going to stick with and say vinegar-based barbecue is the best, right?
Yeah, I grew up on it. So, yeah, I'm sticking with it.
All right. Austin Dillon, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to see what happens with you. And then also a lot of big-time races coming up. You can always watch them. And pretty soon, NASCAR is going to switch over to NBC so you can watch them on WRAL. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
We want to thank Austin Dillon for his time. You might have noticed we had that conversation a little while ago. So if you want to watch his reality show, Austin Dillon in the Fast Lane, that is already out on the USA Network. Check your local listings to see, the dates and times so you can watch that. But also make sure you watch him during the season to see what he's going to do. And Dennis, if you love wine, you got to make sure you go to Childress Vineyards, which is the place. I think it's like close to Welcome, North Carolina. I've been there. It's off of Highway 52 in Davidson County. Wonderful wines. As a matter of fact, it'll be cool if we got a chance to do an actual tour and a show there to have wine and also maybe talk to Mr. Childress. That might be something that we can kind of pitch one day.
Hey, I'm for it. And you know who else can come along with us? Our friends from Wine and Dandy podcast, Sarah and Jamie. They can come along with us too. They can teach us a little bit more about some of the wines and all that. Yep. I like where this is going, Chris. I like where this is going.
I think that'll be a pretty good episode. Nice little crossover episode. Have a little bit of sports, have a little bit of wine in there. Maybe I can get on a horn and talk to somebody. Maybe we can make that thing happen.
Sports and wine. Sounds like a UNC UVA football game.
We got to add some cheese with that as well. And maybe some Sperry's, some Dockers, some khaki pants, khaki shorts.
Hey, we named it the Charcuterie Bowl for a reason, Chris. We named it that. You and I came up with that name on Culture State Radio this past fall, the Charcuterie Bowl. And and people actually heard it. They're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. The Charcuterie Bowl sponsored by Dockers. Thank you guys so much for watching us. And thank you guys for listening. If you're watching on WRL Sports Plus, we appreciate that. If you guys are watching on YouTube, we appreciate that. If you're listening to us through the podcast, we appreciate that. If you can give us 5 stars, we would also appreciate that. And we'll give you a lot of hugs for that. My man, Dennis.
Yep.
Football is coming up very soon, man. I'm excited.
It's wild. It almost feels like it's too soon.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I need a little bit of time to breathe, but I am excited for the content, though.
Oh, yes. I cannot wait to talk about position battles. Woo.
But also, I usually spend more time with you when there's football season.
This is also very true.
I can't wait to spend more time with you, my man.
You can always spend time with me.
But also in a paid capacity, though. It works out, too.
That helps. And also, I feed you. I feed you on Saturdays too.
That's very true. But I'll add on to that.
Okay.
I'll add on to that.
I respect it.
Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. We out. Peace.
The Culture State Podcast, part of the Capital Broadcasting Podcast Network, with new shows coming out every Wednesday. Download and subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts, including the WREL Sports Fan app.